Welcome to Artistic Mission. I'm Dan Jabor, your host. Today's going to be a short episode for a couple of reasons. One reason being that I wanted to stick to a regular show schedule and try to put out episodes on a bi-weekly basis. That means every 2 weeks. And the last couple weeks, rather than working on show production, I've spent more time of my limited availability because I'm doing this on top of a full-time job and in addition to working on my artwork, more realistically in place of doing work on my own artwork. So most of the last couple weeks I have spent working on building the show's network, which means that when a new episode is published, it gets put out not just in one spot, but in many. So not everybody uses the same programs for listening to podcasts. So I need to make sure that the show can be heard on as many as possible. So because of the work I've been doing in the last couple weeks, the show is available now on iTunes. It is available on Google Play. If you have an Android phone, you will find that handy. We're available on Stitcher, which is standard in a lot of Chevrolet and GM cars, autos, whatever you call them. It's available on TuneIn, SoundCloud. I believe I have everything set up properly to where an audio formatted version of this with a nice little graphic background will show up on YouTube. The first 2 episodes, I'd have to go in and probably do that manually or do some sort of like push them back through the system again, but I believe that should all be set up, so fingers crossed. We'll know for sure at the end of this episode once it's published. If you're local to St. Louis, like I am, there's a website that's a network of local podcasts called STL Vernacular. We're on that network also, so if you want to go to stlvernacular.com, you can find our show prominently featured there. You can also do a search on any of the other networks. You'll just have to search the show name, Artistic Mission, and it should show up. I'm also working. Also, the show's been submitted to iHeartRadio. So if you use the iHeartRadio app, pretty soon, as long as the approval process goes through, you should be able to listen to the show there. That's one that's still pending right now. Another exciting thing that might be happening, I'm still in the very, very early stages of planning and investigating this. There's a chance that we'll be taking the show to Art Basel in Miami this December. So looking forward to that, looking forward to finding out more about that. You know, exciting things are in the works. So because of all of that work that I've been putting in on other things, this episode is going to be on the shorter side and a little bit of a deviation from what I hope the normal format would be. Following bit of audio that you're going to hear is a rather short piece that I recorded in my car. I was doing a microphone test for a new setup. I was trying to find the most efficient way that I can add new content and record things for the show. I spend a lot of time in my car driving, so I was hoping that I could find a decent microphone setup for the car so that rather than sitting in silence or listening to the radio, I could be putting some thoughts down for you guys that I could add into the show. So the content is really good. I think the sound quality, it sounds like I'm not driving a car. It sounds like I am piloting a helicopter. Hopefully you'll find more benefit in what I'm saying versus how it sounds. That being said, here that is.
I'm just doing a microphone test right now while I'm driving around I think I'm in Louisiana, Missouri right now. Yeah, I can see the river from here. I just drove down the street and passed it. Not past the river, but looking down the street to my left, I could see the river for a moment. A little glimmer of the setting sun in the water that ripples. A lot of this is just rusty, abandoned, whatever. It looks like it would have been a pretty cool town at one time if there were enough people to support it, but I guess there's just not industry here to support anything other than people on Harleys rolling through every so often and old people coming in the winter to see the fucking eagles and being disappointed that they're birds and not Don Henley. Anyway, pulling yourself up by your bootstraps is total bullshit. Now, this idea isn't totally my own. I've read a couple articles recently expressing a similar opinion, but it really resonated with me, and I've been thinking about it a lot. When a person reaches the level of status what happens is that they'll tell you some shit like, I did it all myself. I came from nothing. I came to America with $1 in my pocket and 75 cents. I moved to LA with the contents of my pocket, the clothes on my back, and, my guitar in a suitcase, a carry-on bag, and a dream. And that's cool, I get it. But lots of people got help along the way. I remember seeing some kind of video on YouTube, and it was from Steve Harvey's show, Steve Harvey, the comedian. And he's always been one to talk about how he came up from nothing and came from poverty to owning his own company to being what he is today. But I saw this clip from his TV show where somebody surprised him on his birthday with a live feed of some friends of his from when he was very first starting out. And there were people that hired him to, I guess they owned a store or some shit, and they hired him and his cleaning company to clean their business. And then they also gave him an account at their travel agent so that he could afford to travel and break into show business and make it. And they let him, run up a bill of, 5 figures. That's not doing it yourself. That's having help. That's fine. I'm not trying to take anything away from him. Obviously, he worked hard, and he got he earned what he got, and he's gotten where he's at for a reason. But that's not pulling yourself up by your bootstraps. You need help to get to where you're going. Sometimes you drive around lost, like I'm driving around right now. You can't find your way. You're aimless, wandering. You might eventually find where you need to be. I have a great sense of direction. No, fuckhead. If you had a great sense of direction, you would have walked straight where you were at. You wouldn't have ever been lost. You would have just been on your way. That same person, if they stop and ask for directions, everybody might not know how to get to where they're going. But if you find that right person that knows where you're going, and they can help you get there faster. A lot of people are ashamed to ask for help. A lot of people give other people shit for asking for help. Now, that's not to say that there's such a thing as asking for help too much. You can't just ask other people to do it for you. There has to be some moderation. But a moderate amount of help from other people is awesome, and it does help you get to where you're going. So think about that. The next time you see somebody that has their Kickstarter for their art project or their GoFundMe for their art project. Personally, I don't like GoFundMe as much because I think you have a better chance of success if it's an all-or-nothing platform where you hit your goal and you get the money or you get nothing. I like that a lot better. I think that's fair because if you can't put in the work to promote asking for money, how are you going to be able to hustle and put in the work to complete your project, especially if you have half as much as you think you need to do it? So that's why I like that more than GoFundMe or the other ones where you get some money, you get whatever you raise. If I say it's going to take me $500 to do a project and I don't get people to donate $500, then I don't get to do that project. I like that. If I think a project is going to take $500 for me to do, and I can only raise $200, and then you give me that to do the project, what the fuck? How is that even going to work? How am I supposed to do what I determine is going to take $500 and do it for $200? Especially when I know so many artists. I know how we work. I don't know how somebody is going to sit there and tell you that they can do the same thing with $200 that they could have done with $500 when their $500 number is probably a bad number to begin with. I know a lot of people who don't think about all the little details. They're just like, oh, 500 is a nice round number. We'll go with that. Or they're like, yeah, I think it'll take $500, but they're like, we're going to build a deck. It takes $500 worth of lumber to build a deck. Yeah, it might take that, but how much do you need in nails? Oh, I didn't think about nails. They'll tell you that the project's going to take $500 to make the artwork, and they're not thinking about framing the artwork. They're not thinking about renting the venue or promoting it for having an exhibition. Shit like that. Pulling yourself up by the bootstraps, wonderful. Very romantic notion, but again, total bullshit. So think about that. Think about how you can help people, give them a hand up who are coming up, and don't be afraid to extend your hand upwards and have somebody who's a little further up than you are help you on your way. Don't be ashamed of that. It's not a failure. It's part of the game.
hopefully that wasn't too painful to listen to, and hopefully you found some benefit from it or got a new perspective. I know it's something that I've been thinking about for quite a bit since the concept was introduced to me, and I've been starting to play it out in my head and think more about not being afraid to ask for help. With that in mind, I have started a Patreon page for the podcast. If you go to patreon.com, patreon.com/artistic mission, you'll find a page for the show. Now, because this show is uncensored, because I want to be able to talk to people freely about ideas without them being hesitant about not saying the wrong thing or holding back in any way. I want raw honesty. And because I want to have people that, possibly do nude artwork or whatever, I don't want this buttoned down in any way. So I have also made the Patreon page as an adults-only setting, which the way that affects everything else is that if someone goes to Patreon and they want to find artists to support, they might do a search, and this show will not show up in search. You have to type it in directly. So unlike any of the other networks that we're on, where you could just normally search the show name and find it, you have to actually key in the URL of patreon.com/artistic mission to be able to find the show and to find our link. Or you'll have to find the link somewhere online and click it directly. So it's a little harder to get to, which means it's going to be a little bit harder for you to support the show. But hopefully you'll find that that's worth doing. I have a lot of really low-priced reward levels for that. Patreon works a little bit like Kickstarter. You can get into the network for as little as $1 a month. And if I had $1 for every person who told me they liked the show would be sounding a lot better. I'm looking to try to do some equipment upgrades here in the near future so that it doesn't sound like I'm speaking from inside of a helicopter flying over the city, and so that there's not as much background noise or audio problems. I've spent a lot of time, most of the last year, trying to learn audio production, and I just don't have the necessary equipment to do it well. Put that into artistic terms, if you wanted to be able to draw really well, and all you have is crayons in the back of the placemat at the restaurant, yeah, you can make some neat stuff, but it's going to be a lot different than if you had the right materials. So check out the Patreon page if the show's inspired you to help out. That would be awesome. And if you check the show notes at danjabor.com/podcast, I'll post a link to that Steve Harvey interview that I mentioned in the first part of the episode. I am going to let you go for now, and we'll be back in 2 weeks with a full episode, interviews, everything you've come to expect from the show. Have a good one. Artistic Mission is produced by Open Door Studios. If you liked what you heard, please take a moment to subscribe, and don't forget to rate and review the show. This helps us to get more visibility on a global scale. It only takes a moment of your time, but it goes a really long way towards helping us to share St. Louis artists with the rest of the world. To see additional content, such as pictures and links as mentioned in the episode, visit danjabor.com/podcast.
This is really pissing me off to no end.